Hey now, Brawlers, it's time for another Board Game Brawl review with Nick Minahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com. Hey folks, today we're going to take a look at the Builder's Antiquity from Asmodee and Bombix. Now, this may sound familiar to you because I reviewed the game The Builder's Middle Ages quite a while ago. You can check out that review up in the top corner of my screen. I'm going to have a link, and then down in the description section you can follow that link as well. And this game is very, very similar to the original Builders. In fact, the main core mechanisms are exactly the same. It's just that Antiquity adds a few things into the mix, and of course the theme has changed, whereas the other one was actually the Middle Ages, as the name suggests. This one is all about ancient Egypt, but the premise is the same. You are drafting cards from the center of the table, both buildings and workers, and you use the workers to make the buildings by paying money, and there's a very limited pool of actions that you have available to work with, and it's essentially a race to the finish line. The first person to get to a certain point threshold is going to end the game and probably win the game as well. And I praise the original Builders of the Middle Ages because I thought that it was a very fluid design, very easy to get into, a gateway-style Euro game that has, as you can tell, a very small footprint. The other Builders comes in exactly the same shape of box or tin, as the case may be. Antiquity adds a few extra things into the mix, however. It actually ups the complexity level just a little bit to make it a little bit more of a gamier game. Did that work out for it? Let's go ahead and take a look at how the game is played. Then we're going to come back and let you know what I think. Alright, I'm going to give you a quick look at the Builder's Antiquity. This is a competitive game for 2 to 4 players. The goal of the game is to have the most points at the end of the game, and the end of the game is going to be triggered when someone gets to 17 points on their turn. They're going to finish out their turn, and if there are other people who have not yet acted in this round of play, then they are going to get to take a turn as well. So the end result is that everyone gets an equal amount of turns, and then whoever has the most points after someone triggers the end game at 17 points is going to be the winner of the game. Points are going to be out on the building and tool cards. It's going to look like a little laurel wreath, as victory points are often wont to do. But you also are going to get a 1/10 of a point for every one of your coins that you have. In other words, every 10 coins is worth 1 point. Now here's the general gist of the game. In order to get the most amount of points and also to get money, which will fuel your future endeavors in order to make more buildings, you're going to need to have certain skills. Your workers are going to provide you with skills. And over here on the side of these building cards, you have the little notches for each type of skill, like I guess bricklaying and painting and things like that. Those notches represent the types, the number of skill checks or skill notches you need on your workers with the tools that they have in order to successfully complete that building. And if you are able to successfully complete the building, you will get these victory points at the end of the game. You get the coins right away. You'll flip it over to this side to show that it is completed, and there's the victory points that you're going to get. So that's the general gist, and how do we get from here to there? So every player is going to start off with 10 coins from the bank, and you're also going to start off with one of these worker cards, specifically in apprentice cards. Any apprentice card that is not being used because you are playing with less than 4 players gets shuffled back into the deck, and someone's going to start off with the first player card as well. Now, notice a couple of things on the apprentice card, and these are the same types of things you're going to see on all of the worker cards. It's just that the apprentice is the weakest of all of them. See these skills over here? These represent the skills you need in order to complete the building, and this is the amount of money you need to spend in order to send this worker to work. What you'll need to do is have a building in front of you, and then you're going to try to see how these symbols match up. As soon as you can meet the threshold of worker skills attached to a building or workers with tools and so on, then you immediately are able to build the building. But in order to do all of these things, this goes back here, you're going to need to use actions. Now, every turn of the game, you have 3 actions to spend. Starts with the start player, then you keep going around and around and around until you trigger the end game. Now, you can have more than 3 actions on your turn if you really want to, but every extra action is going to cost you $5, 5 sesterces, whatever the proper name of them is. And that, by the way, is on top of any cost it costs you to actually send your workers to work. So here's how a typical turn, and I haven't gotten to all this extra stuff yet, we'll get there, but here's how a typical turn in the game is going to work. Let's say it's at the start of the game. Now I have nothing right this second, but I may want to build my way up. So actually out here in the field we have a couple of tool cards. Now tool cards are going to be very useful because you build them the same way that you build buildings, and they'll give you victory points as well, but just not that many. But the good news is, then when they're completed, they actually act like special tools for your workers to give them a boost towards completing other projects. So there's like a scaffold, and here is an architect's table, so that's going to be for a different skill when you can actually complete it, and so on and so forth. Or I could just say, well, I'm just going to throw caution to the wind and take a building first, and I'll figure out how to get to the point where I can complete it later. That's the thing, is that with one of your actions, you can take one of the building cards from the lineup, whether it's a tool or not, put it in front of you, and you can do that as many times as you want. You're basically just taking blueprints at that point. But they're not going to be worth anything to you quite yet. Now, the same rule for both the workers row and for the building and tool row applies the same. You're going to have to, every time that you take one of the things from the lineup, you replace it immediately, so that people can have 5 different options for both, and also can see what's immediately about to come out because of the cards being double-sided. Speaking of that, just the same way you can take buildings, you can take workers. For one action each, you can take one of the workers in the lineup and put it in front of you. You don't do anything with it right away. However, one of the other actions in the game is to put your workers to work. If you want to put your workers to work, you need to spend whatever it is, in this case 2 coins or 4 coins, and then you will attach them to your building project. Now, until that building is complete, meaning you have equal to or more of the different symbols that you need in order to build it, they're stuck there until that's it. They're basically stuck on that project until it is complete or the end of the game. Now, alternatively, as a basic action, as a last resort, you can also just take money. You might be desperate for money because you haven't been able to complete any buildings yet, but you need to send more people to work, in which case for one action you get 1 coin, for 2 actions you get 3 coins, and I believe it's for 3 actions that you spend, you get 6 coins. So you can spend your actions however you want, doing a variety of actions, as long as theoretically you can pay for them, and you can even take extra actions by paying 5 coins for every extra action. Now, everything I just covered is actually pretty much exactly the same as it was in the original Builders game. So let's talk about the new stuff that's in Antiquity. The simple stuff first. Over here we have loan cards. If you choose to take a loan card on your turn, it counts as an action. In fact, everything I'm about to talk about counts as an action called the investment action. That's what these all collectively are called. But if I take a loan, I'm going to take 10 coins immediately, which is fantastic. However, if I'm stuck with this loan at the end of the game, it's -2 victory points, and in this game, that's a really big swing of points. So at any point during the game, or right at the end when you're doing the final point tally, you can choose to pay off that loan by spending 15 coins. If you can't do it, you're going to take those negative coins, so you have to run a risk management assessment as to whether or not this is going to be worth it for you early in the game. Now, you also have these university cards, which are, of course, the weirdest looking cards in the game that definitely stand out. Essentially, what you can do is decide to spend 7 coins on your turn to educate one of your workers. When you educate a worker, you're going to take this template card, and you're actually physically going to put it over the worker that you've educated, and it will replace whatever skill the card is specifically for. So this one's for painting, so that makes his painting skill into a 3. It overrides the original one. So that is that, and there's one of these cards for each different type of skill, of course. Then we have the prisoners / slaves, whatever you want to call them. So what these are, they effectively function like workers, but you have to purchase them from the market. So here they have a 7 coin purchase fee, and notice there's different workers for all different types of skills, or prisoners for all different types of skills. And then at the end of the game, they're going to be worth -1 victory point. But the good news is, when you buy one of these prisoners, let's just call them slaves. They're slaves, okay? I don't know why they're pussyfooting around that. When you buy one of these slaves, you can put them to work for free. You never have to pay to put them to work like you do for the normal workers. But again, at the end of the game, they're going to be worth that negative point. So either at the end of the game, by spending an action, which at the end of the game is going to cost you 5 coins, or at any point as a free action during the course of the game, you can free them by spending the cost on the other side. No. I'm sorry. Forgive me on that. You're spending an action to free them. It's if you do it during the course of the game, it doesn't cost you any kind of money to free them. It just costs you an action. But at the end of the game, an action is extra, so it's going to cost you an extra 5 coins. That's what I got confused on. But in any case, once they're freed, they no longer are worth negative victory points, but the downside is that now they are treated like normal workers, which means you have to pay them to put them to work. That's what this is up here, although they are better than a lot of the other workers, at least. And you will have this row of prisoners up here. You choose when you want to take one or not. They're just sort of or you can put them in a stack if you want. There's not enough of them to have a replenishing pile. And then finally, the other new thing in the game are these simple tools, like a mallet and a saw and so on. They all only cost 2 coins, and they all only give you a very slight boost, like 1 point in each of the 4 skills. There's 1 for each skill. When you choose to purchase this, it can go onto one of your workers like any other tool, and then you can use it to help build a building. But as soon as you have successfully completed a project with one of these tools, it goes back to the table, and then other people can buy it in the future. And that's pretty much it. And that is actually entirely the game. On your turn, you have your 3 actions to spend for a variety of different actions. Getting workers, putting those workers to work, taking blueprints, building those blueprints, getting coins, getting more coins, getting hopefully victory points for the end of the game, and potentially making use of all the different investments that are out here on the table. Now, let's get to my final thoughts. The Builder in Antiquity is, I would say, every bit as good as the original Builders game. The interesting thing is, however, that if you choose to use all of the extra stuff that, I say extra, but the changed things, the extra things that are added onto this one that the original doesn't have, if you choose to use all of those, it actually bumps it up to definitely not a heavy game, and maybe not even by someone's definition a moderate game of difficulty, but certainly heavier than like a gateway game that I believe that the original Builders was, which puts it at an interesting position, because I would say that if I have both options available to me and I'm playing with new people to the group, which is invariably how I use the Builders, or if I want just something very, very quick that gives me that strategic, resource management, almost worker placement type feel, I would still always go for the original Builders, only because the extra stuff here almost makes it a little bit too complicated to introduce to new people. Now, the thing is, the changes in Antiquity are modular. For the most part. I mean, you can just choose not to play with them, especially things like the University. I didn't actually compare every single card from both sets together, but I feel like maybe the buildings in Antiquity are more difficult to erect, some of the more powerful ones, and that is why you have options like the loans and the having better workers in the form of the slaves, prisoners to take, and more of those little tool cards as well. But I still feel like you could probably choose to not play with those things, and maybe you'll just have a longer game, and it will reduce the complexity. So I don't think that this is like a bad get, because you can just choose to not play with certain things. But it was interesting that they went with that route. I suppose that maybe some people were complaining that the original Builders, there wasn't enough meat on the bones there, but I still feel like that was probably a good thing for that particular type of game. But nevertheless, I still think that the Builders Antiquity is still as good as the other version. I just thought it was noteworthy that maybe you don't want to use everything that comes in this game. The artwork is still as good as the original version. It's just Egyptian themed as opposed to the other one, and the theme is there, but that's part of the reason why they keep putting out new sets, and there'll probably be more of them that are in different regions and time periods and things like that, because it is sort of just a universal thing. It's just slapping a theme onto some mechanisms, but hey, the game is very fast and the mechanisms are really solid, so I don't mind the lack of real thematic elements in this quite as much. A lot of the praise that I gave the game originally still applies here. I love the whole aspect of taking those cards, and it's kind of like every decision is super critical, because everything is very tight, and everyone is working towards the same thing. So it's a pure efficiency engine thing here. Like, okay, I really want to lock down that building, but in taking that building and wasting one of my precious actions, expensive actions, in order to take this building or blueprint, so to speak, now I am giving up potentially finishing something else or getting more workers that are really going to help me out in the long run. Someone else might snatch them up ahead of me, and maybe it's better just to defer and hope the better ones come out along the way. If you ever get into the position of having to take money as like a desperate last resort for your actions, That's a really bad sign, but sometimes you just have to do it. You just get into those types of positions. But I feel like if you played this, even though I do still call it a gateway game, if you were to play this game with several really experienced people, it would be totally like no slip-ups allowed. That's the kind of like just raw game that this is, with very, very little luck involved. And I think that's a very good thing overall, but again, something to note for certain people. Now, as far as the, so a lot of the, again, the positive things I have to say about the builders carries over from one to the other. Now, as far as the new stuff, in particular in Antiquity, to break it down bit by bit, some things I like, some things I'm like, meh. And overall, I feel like maybe 2 of these 3 or 4 things in the game would have been better than everything thrown in all at once. I like the university, education cards or knowledge cards, which look really cool as well. The templates that you throw over the cards to improve your workers, send them to university, cost you $7. That's a really neat idea because it's nice. It's another interesting decision in the mix. Do I just get more workers and have to pay more to send them out anyways? Or do I spend a lot of money up front now to make one of the workers that I have better? And in the long run, it's going to be more efficient as far as how I spend my money, assuming, of course, that the buildings I want to build come out that require that particular skill. It's another interesting decision, and so I like that quite a bit. The prisoner/slaves thing, I don't know. They're okay. I feel like that's a little bit of courting controversy they could have avoided. I don't know if that's actually going to be the case, if anyone would be offended by that or not. They probably shouldn't be. But I still think that they're not that great. They're only good. I mean, I found myself in various situations saying, well, it'd be kind of neat to take one of them because they are better than the workers, but it's so expensive. And so while they are good, overall, I don't feel, because this is such an action efficiency game, that they're the best option for you to take. But perhaps if I played this game 100 times, I might find that susses out to be different, that maybe they are going to be objectively better. But for right now, it always felt like I'd be better off just taking a worker and potentially sending them to get education with one of the new template cards instead. The loan card is a little more interesting because it seems really daunting at first, like, well, 15 coins by the end of the game, and the point margins in this game can be very, very tight. So it's like, well, if I don't pay that back, I might be in a lot of trouble. But I still found this to be a very interesting concept. Another thing that I think was not necessarily necessary, but well, at least it was interesting and thrown into the mix. And again, I think some of these things you can use, some of these things you don't have to use. You can just play the builders the same way as you did the Middle Ages version. I think you would be okay. So overall, I do recommend the game. I like it quite a bit. I like it just as much as I like the original. It's just that for simplicity's sake, I might just not use everything that's in this version of it. But certainly the fact that this is such an open-ended and, light footprint system, I would like to see what they do in future versions to tweak that up. As long as I think the tweaks, even if it changes the fundamental gameplay but doesn't add too much extra complexity to the game, I think that would be the key to it. So the Builders Antiquity and the Builders Middle Ages are both very, very fine games and definitely good gateway introduction games. Check them out. Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.